Margaret's hands trembled as she deleted yet another message from David. 3 words that could destroy everything. I love you. She looked at herself in the hotel bathroom mirror, lipstick smudged, hair tousled by his fingers, just minutes earlier. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. Not the woman who baked cookies for church and never missed a school event for her children. But she had never felt so alive. Margaret's hands trembled as she deleted another text message from David. 3 words that could destroy everything. I love you. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of the Grandview Hotel. Lipstick smeared, hair disheveled from his fingers running through it just minutes ago. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. This wasn't the woman who baked cookies for church fundraisers and never missed a single one of her children's school events. But God help her, she had never felt more alive. The autumn air carried the sweet scent of fermenting grapes through the half-opened window as she fixed her appearance. Sonoma County's vineyards stretched endlessly beyond the hotel grounds, their leaves painted in brilliant reds and golds that seemed to mock the chaos brewing inside her chest. 8 months. 8 months of stolen afternoons, coded messages, and lies that came easier each time she told them. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Richard, her husband of 23 years. Running late at the office again, dinner's getting cold. The guilt hit her like a physical blow. Richard had been trying so hard lately. The romantic dinners he'd been preparing, the weekend getaway brochures scattered across his nightstand, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, as if he knew something was slipping away and was desperately trying to catch it before it fell completely. She typed back quickly. Sorry, honey, big project deadline, save me a plate. Another lie, another small betrayal that chipped away at the foundation of everything she'd built. Margaret drove home through the winding roads that cut through the valley, past the sprawling estates where winemaking families had lived for generations. This was a place where traditions mattered, where everyone knew everyone else's business, where a scandal could follow you for decades. Her own family had lived here for 40 years. Her children had grown up playing in these same vineyards, building forts among the grapevines, dreaming of futures that probably included staying close to home. The house was dark except for the kitchen light when she pulled into the driveway. Richard sat at the dining table, still in his work clothes, a plate of cold pasta in front of him. He looked up when she entered, and she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach clench. How was your day? His voice was carefully neutral. Busy. You know how it gets during harvest season. She set her purse down, avoiding his gaze. David's been pushing everyone hard to get the new product line ready for the holiday market. David. Richard repeated the name slowly, as if testing how it sounded. You mention him a lot lately. Margaret's heart skipped. He's my boss, of course I mention him. Of course. Richard stood up, gathered his plate. I waited 2 hours. The roast beef you love, the potatoes with rosemary from our garden, I even opened that bottle of wine from our anniversary. The accusation in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. She wanted to throw herself into his arms, to confess everything, to beg his forgiveness. Instead, she heard herself say, I told you I was working late. This project is important for my career. Your career? He paused at the kitchen sink. When did that become more important than us? The question hung in the air like smoke. Margaret opened her mouth to deny it, to reassure him, to lie again. But the words wouldn't come, because somewhere along the way her feelings for David had become more than just desire. They had become hope. Hope for a different kind of life where she didn't always have to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect woman who made everyone else's needs more important than her own. Richard's phone rang, breaking the tension. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Mom, she's been having those dizzy spells again. As he took the call, moving into the living room for privacy, Margaret sank into a kitchen chair. Through the window, she could see the lights of David's house twinkling in the distance. His property bordered the valley's most prestigious vineyard, a sprawling estate that his family had built over 3 generations. He'd grown up with expectations, with the weight of legacy on his shoulders. Maybe that's why he understood her need to break free from the roles everyone else had assigned to her. Her phone vibrated with a text. can't stop thinking about this afternoon. When can I see you again? David. Always direct, never playing games. It was one of the things she loved about him. With Richard, every conversation had become a careful dance around unspoken tensions. With David, she could say exactly what she felt. She was about to respond when footsteps approached. Richard appeared. In the doorway, his face grave. I have to go to Sacramento tomorrow. Mum fell again. The doctors want to run more tests. Oh, honey, is she okay? I don't know, she sounded scared on the phone. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I might need to stay for a few days. Margaret felt a shameful flutter of excitement. 3 days with David. 3 days without having to watch every word, every expression, every moment. Of course you should go. I'll handle things here. Will you? The question was loaded with meaning she pretended not to understand. What? Do you mean? Richard studied her face for a long moment. Nothing, I'm just tired. But as he walked away, Margaret caught something in his expression that chilled her, a knowing sadness, as if he'd already accepted a truth she thought she'd been hiding. That night, she lay awake listening to Richard's steady breathing, planning her next few days of freedom. But freedom felt less sweet when it was built on someone else's pain. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Margaret arrived at work to find David's office empty, his assistant looking confused. He's in an emergency meeting with his father and the company lawyers, Jennifer whispered. Something about selling his shares in the business. Margaret's blood ran cold. David had mentioned wanting to make changes, wanting to build something new together, but selling his shares, that was his inheritance, his family legacy. Did he say why? Jennifer shook her head. But there are rumors flying. The accountant found some irregularities in the books. Unexplained expenses, payments that don't match up. The hotel bills, the expensive dinners, the jewelry he'd bought her that she kept, hidden in her office desk. Margaret felt the walls closing in. Her phone rang. It was her sister Catherine, and the timing couldn't be worse. Maggie, we need to talk. Are you free for lunch? Catherine had always been the responsible one, the one who followed rules and expected everyone else to do the same. She had an uncanny ability to see through people's facades, and lately she'd been asking too many pointed questions about Margaret's sudden interest in working late. I can't today, Kat. It's crazy busy here. It's always crazy busy these days. When's the last time we had a real conversation? And don't you dare say you're fine, because I know you're not. Margaret closed her eyes. What do you mean? I mean you're different, distracted, secretive. Mom would have recognized the signs immediately. Catherine's voice softened. Talk to me, Maggie. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together. There's nothing to figure out. Really? Then, why did Richard call me last night asking if you'd mentioned any problems at work? The betrayal hit like ice water. Her own husband was checking up on her, involving her family in their problems. He had no right. He's worried, Maggie. He loves you. We all do. Margaret ended the call, her hands shaking with anger and panic. How many people were watching her? How many had already figured out what she thought she'd been hiding so carefully? The office door opened, and David walked in, his face pale, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. We need to talk, he said quietly. He closed the door behind him, something he never did during work hours. The gesture felt final, like closing the lid on a coffin. The accountant found the hotel charges, the credit card receipts. My father wants explanations I can't give without... He trailed off, but she understood. Without exposing us. Margaret, I need you to know that selling my shares isn't just about avoiding scandal. It's about us. About building something new together, somewhere nobody knows our history. The words she'd dreamed of hearing for months now filled her with terror instead of joy. David, I can't just disappear. I have children, a husband, a life here. A life that's making you miserable. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you smiled the way you do with me? When's the last time you felt like yourself instead of playing the role everyone expects? He was right, and that made it worse. With David, she laughed easily, spoke her mind, felt beautiful and desired, and understood. With her family, she felt like an actress who'd been playing the same character so long she'd forgotten who she really was underneath. I need time to think. We don't have time. David moved closer, took her hands. My father's calling a family meeting tomorrow. If I don't have answers by then, what happens then? Then this ends, Margaret. All of it. The company will launch an investigation. People will ask questions. We can't answer, and I won't let you go down with me. The noble gesture should have made her love him more. Instead, it highlighted the impossible situation they'd created. Every choice led to someone getting hurt. Every path forward required destroying something precious. That evening, Richard didn't come home at all. He called from Sacramento to say his mother had been admitted to the hospital, that the tests showed signs of a stroke. I'll drive up tonight, Margaret offered, grateful. For the chance to do something genuinely caring. No, don't. The doctors say she needs rest. Besides, someone should be there when the kids call. Their daughter Emma was finishing her psychology degree at Berkeley, and their son Michael was in his first year of law school at Stanford. Both were old enough to handle family crises, but Richard still saw them as the children they'd been, still wanted to protect them from life's harsh realities. How is she really? Scared, confused, asking for you. Richard's voice cracked slightly. She keeps saying she wants to see her daughter-in-law before it's too late. The guilt was overwhelming. While she'd been sneaking around hotel rooms, her husband had been shouldering the burden of his mother's declining health alone. While she'd been planning a future with another man, Richard had been trying to hold their family together. Richard, I know things haven't been easy between us lately, he interrupted. I know I've been difficult, working too much, taking you for granted. But I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you, even when I didn't show it well. I love you too, she whispered, and meant it. That was the cruelest part. She loved them both in different ways for different reasons. But love wasn't supposed to be divided like this. Love wasn't supposed to tear you apart from the inside. I'll be home tomorrow night. Maybe we can talk then, really talk about everything. The emphasis on everything sent a chill down her spine. How much did he know? How much had he figured out? After they hung up, Margaret sat in her empty house, surrounded by the remnants of the life they'd built together. Family photos smiled down at her from every surface. Emma's debate team trophy, Michael's high school graduation picture, vacation souvenirs from trips they'd taken when the children were small and the future had seemed so certain. Her phone buzzed with another message from David. Meet me tonight, please. We need to decide what we're going to do. She stared at the words for a long time. This was the crossroads. This was the moment where she chose one life or the other, where she became either the woman who destroyed her, family for love, or the woman who gave up her heart to preserve her home. The decision should have been simple. The right choice was obvious. But as she grabbed her keys and headed for the door, Margaret realized that doing the right thing and doing the easy thing were sometimes two very different paths. And tonight, she wasn't sure which one she was brave enough to take. The Grandview Hotel's parking lot was nearly empty when Margaret arrived. Only David's silver Mercedes sat under the dim glow of the security lights, looking lonely and somehow ominous in the autumn darkness. She sat in her car for several minutes, engine running, knowing that the moment she turned it off and walked through those doors, there would be no going back. Her phone rang. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, she whispered. To herself. But her sister's persistence was legendary. Maggie, where are you? Home? Why? No, you're not. I just drove by your house. It's completely dark, and your car's not in the driveway. Margaret's heart sank. Kat, I can't do this. Right now. Can't do what? Have an honest conversation with your sister? The same sister who lied to Mom on your behalf when you snuck out to see Tommy Morrison in high school? The same sister who covered for you when you crashed Dad's car and were too scared to tell him? This is different. How? How is it different? Maggie? The question hung in the air like a challenge, because it was different. Tommy Morrison had been a teenage crush, a few stolen kisses behind the school gymnasium. This was a married woman's heart being torn in half, a family's future, hanging in the balance, a choice between security and a love that felt like drowning and flying at the same time. I have to go. Margaret Elizabeth, don't you dare hang up on me. Whatever you're about to do, think about the consequences. Think about Emma and Michael. Think about Richard. I think about them every single day, Margaret's voice broke. That's the problem. I'm always thinking about everyone else. When do I get to think about what I want? The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Catherine spoke, her voice gentler than before. What do you want, Maggie? Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. I want to feel alive again. I want to matter to someone. I want to be seen as more than just a wife and mother and all the roles I play. The words poured out like wine from a broken bottle. I want to be loved for who I am, not for what I do for everyone else. And you don't think Richard loves you for who you are? Margaret closed her eyes. Richard loves the woman he married 23 years ago. The woman who was happy to make his needs her priority, who didn't question the life he planned for us. But I'm not that woman anymore, Kat. I don't know if I ever really was. Through the hotel's glass doors, she could see David pacing in the lobby, checking his watch, running his hands through his dark hair, the way he did when he was nervous. I see him, Catherine said quietly. What? Through the window. You're at the Grandview, aren't you? And he's in there waiting for you. Margaret's blood turned to ice. How did you? Because I'm not stupid, Maggie, and neither is Richard. We've all known something was wrong for months. The question is whether you're going to handle this like an adult or blow up everything you've built because you're having a midlife crisis. The accusation stung because it carried a grain of truth. Was this just a midlife crisis? Was David simply an escape from the mundane realities of a long marriage? Or was this something deeper, something real enough to justify the destruction it would cause? I love him. I'm sure you do. But love isn't always enough, honey. Sometimes love means making the harder choice. Margaret ended the call and sat, in the darkness, watching David through the glass. He looked tired, older than his 45 years. The weight of his family's expectations, the pressure of the business scandal, the impossible situation they'd created together. It was aging him before her eyes. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Mom's stable. Coming home tomorrow afternoon. We need to talk. The message felt like a countdown timer. Less than 18 hours before her husband returned, before whatever fragile balance she'd been maintaining finally collapsed. She turned, off the engine, and walked toward the hotel entrance. Each step felt like a small betrayal, but also like a small liberation. David looked up when she entered, relief flooding his face. I wasn't sure you'd come. Neither was I. They took the elevator to the third floor in silence. Room 314 had become their sanctuary over the past 8 months, the one place where they could be honest about their feelings without worrying about who might overhear. Talk to me, David said once they were inside. Tell me what you're thinking. Margaret moved to the window, looking out at the valley that had shaped both their lives. I'm thinking that we've created a mess that's about to destroy both our families. So we leave, start over somewhere else. It's not that simple. Why not? She turned to face him, this man who had awakened parts of herself she'd thought were dead. Because I have a daughter who's about to graduate college, a son who's struggling in his first year of law school, a mother-in-law who's asking for me on what might be her deathbed. I can't just disappear. You're not disappearing. You're choosing to live your own life instead of the one everyone else picked for you. And what about your life? Your family's business? Your father's legacy? David's expression darkened. My father's legacy is built on expectations I never wanted to fulfill. He spent 30 years grooming me to be a smaller version of himself, to marry the right woman, produce the right grandchildren, carry on the family name without ever questioning whether that's what would actually make me happy. But the business will survive without me. Maybe it'll even thrive. My cousin Marcus has always been better with the financial side anyway. He moved closer, took her hands. Margaret, I'm 45 years old. I've spent my entire adult life doing what other people expected. When do I get to choose happiness? The same question Catherine had asked her turned inside out. When did anyone get to choose happiness if it meant hurting the people who depended on them? What if we're wrong? She whispered. What if this is just the excitement of something forbidden, and once we're actually together, it falls apart? What if it doesn't? What if this is real and we let it slip away because we're too scared to take the risk? Before she could answer, her phone rang. Emma's number. I have to take this. Mom? Emma's voice sounded young, worried. Is everything okay? Dad called me about Grandma, but he seemed, I don't know, off somehow. Margaret's heart clenched. Emma had always been perceptive, even as a small child. Psychology studies had only sharpened her ability to read people's emotions. He's just worried about Grandma. You know how he gets? It's more than that, though, isn't it? He asked me weird questions, like whether you'd mentioned any problems at work, whether you seemed happy at home. The walls were closing in from every direction. Emma, honey, your father loves you very much. If he seemed upset, it's probably just stress about Grandma's condition. Mom, are you and Dad okay? The direct question hung in the air like a sword. Margaret looked at David, who was watching her with an expression of careful neutrality, and realized that her answer would determine not just her daughter's peace of mind, but the entire trajectory of her life. We're working through some things? What kind of things? Adult things, marriage things. Nothing you need to worry about. But Emma was 22, not 12. Are you having an affair? The question hit like a physical blow. Margaret sank onto the hotel room's chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Emma, oh God, you are. Mom, how could you? It's complicated. It's not complicated, it's simple. You made vows to Dad, you built a family together, and you're throwing it all away for what? Some guy at work. The pain in her daughter's voice was unbearable. This was Emma, her baby girl, who used to crawl into bed with her during thunderstorms, who still called every Sunday just to chat, who had been planning to bring her new boyfriend home for Thanksgiving. Emma, please try to understand. Understand what? That my mother is a cheater? That everything I thought I knew about our family was a lie? The line went dead. Margaret stared at the phone, feeling as if she'd just watched her daughter disappear forever. She knows, she whispered. David knelt beside her chair. It's going to be okay. Once she has time to process. No, Margaret stood up abruptly. It's not going to be okay. Nothing about this is okay. She paced to the window, then back to the door, trapped in a cage of her own making. Do you know what Emma said to me last month? She said she hoped she'd have a marriage like ours someday. She said she admired how we'd stayed together through everything, how we still seem to really like each other after all these years. Margaret and Michael. God, Michael is going to hate me. He idolizes his father. Richard coached his little league team, taught him to drive, helped him study. For the LSATs, how am I supposed to explain to my son that I'm destroying the man he respects most in the world? The hotel room suddenly felt suffocating. Margaret grabbed her purse, headed for the door. Where are you going? Home, to my family, to try to figure out how to fix this before it's too late. Margaret, wait. David caught her arm. Running away isn't going to solve anything. I'm not running away, I'm running toward my children, who need their mother to be someone they can respect, toward my husband, who deserves better than this. What about what you deserve? The question stopped her at the door. Maybe what I deserve is the life I chose 23 years ago. Maybe happiness isn't about getting everything you want. Maybe it's about being grateful for what you have. You don't believe that. He was right. She didn't believe it. But she needed to believe it, needed to find a way to make peace with sacrifice, because the alternative was destroying everyone she'd ever loved. I need time to think. The family meeting is tomorrow morning. After that, everything changes. Margaret nodded, understanding the ultimatum. After tomorrow, David would either be free to start over with her, or this relationship would be over forever. The drive home took forever, and no time at all. Margaret found herself pulling into her driveway with no clear memory of the route she'd taken, her mind spinning with fragments of conversation, memories, possibilities. The house felt different when she walked inside. Not physically, everything was exactly as she'd left it, but something in the atmosphere had shifted, as if the walls themselves knew that secrets had been exposed, that the careful balance they'd all been maintaining was about to collapse. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the artifacts of her family life. Emma's graduation announcement still pinned to the bulletin board, Michael's acceptance letter to law school framed and hanging beside the refrigerator, family photos from happier times when the future had seemed so certain, so bright. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Whatever you decided tonight, I love you. We all do. Don't forget that." Then another from David. "I meant what I said, about starting over, about choosing happiness. The offer stands, whatever you decide." And finally, unexpectedly, one from Richard. "Talk to the kids tonight. They're worried about you. So am I. We're a family, Maggie. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it together. 3 different kinds of love. 3 different paths forward. The sister who wanted to protect her from her own mistakes. The lover who wanted to free her from a life that no longer fit. The husband who wanted to repair what they'd broken." Margaret turned off her phone and walked through the house, really looking at it for the first time in months. The living room where they'd watched countless movies together, where Michael had taken his first steps, where Emma had practiced her debate speeches. The master bedroom where she and Richard had held each other through miscarriages and job losses, and the ordinary sorrows of a long marriage. This was the life she'd built, choice by choice, year by year. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't passionate, but it was real and it was hers, and destroying it wouldn't just hurt Richard, it would tear apart the foundation her children had built their own lives on. She found herself in Emma's old room, looking at the awards and photographs and memories of a little girl who had grown into a young woman who still believed in love that lasted forever. That's when she saw it. A letter in Emma's handwriting, apparently never sent, lying on the desk beside her old computer. "Dear Mom and Dad," it began. "I know I don't say it enough, but thank you for showing me what a good marriage looks like. I watch my friends' parents getting divorced, fighting over custody, and I feel so lucky that you two never gave up on each other. Whatever problems you've faced them together. And that's taught me more about love than any psychology textbook ever could." Margaret sank into Emma's desk chair, the letter trembling in her hands. This was what she would be destroying. Not just her marriage, but her children's faith in love itself. Her phone rang, David's number. She didn't answer. It rang again, then again. Finally, she turned the phone off entirely and went to bed in the guest room, unable to face the master. Bedroom she shared with Richard. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow she would have to choose between the woman she'd become and the woman she'd always been. But tonight, surrounded by the ghosts of family dinners and birthday parties and ordinary Tuesday evenings that had somehow added up to a lifetime, Margaret finally understood what she had to do. Margaret woke to the sound of rain against the guest room windows and the unmistakable rumble of Richard's truck in the driveway. She glanced at the clock, 6:47 a.m. He was home earlier than expected, and something about the aggressive way he'd slammed the truck door told her that whatever conversation awaited them wouldn't be gentle. She found him in the kitchen, still, wearing yesterday's clothes, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion, and something else, something that looked like grief. "How's your mother?" she asked, though the careful way he was avoiding her eyes suggested this conversation wouldn't be about his mother at all. "Stable. The doctors think she'll recover, but slowly." Richard poured himself coffee with mechanical precision. "She kept asking about you, about why you weren't there. Richard, I wanted to come, but you said—" "I know what I said." He turned to face her then, and Margaret saw 23 years of marriage in his expression, all the love and disappointment and quiet resignation of a man who'd been trying to save something that was already lost. "But that's not really why you didn't come, is it?" The question hung between them like a blade. Margaret felt the urge to lie, to deflect, to maintain the pretense that had been slowly suffocating them both. Instead, she found herself saying, "No, it's not." Something shifted in Richard's face. Relief, maybe, that the truth was finally in the open. How long? 8 months. Jesus, Maggie. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 51 years. 8 months. All those late nights, all those work emergencies, I was stupid enough to believe. They weren't all lies. Some of them were real work. Does that matter? The pain in his voice cut deeper than anger would have. Does it matter which lies were real and which ones were cover stories for your affair? Margaret wanted to defend herself, to explain that it wasn't just an affair, that what she felt for David was real and transformative, and nothing like the casual betrayal Richard was imagining. But looking at her husband, really looking at him, she realized that the distinction meant nothing to the man whose heart she'd been breaking piece by piece for months. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Richard studied her face with the careful attention of an accountant reviewing suspicious numbers. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter. David's name flashed on the screen and Richard's expression hardened. "Answer it." "Richard, answer it, Margaret. Let's get everything out in the open." With trembling fingers, she swiped to accept the call. "Margaret, thank God, I've been trying to reach you all night." David's voice was tight with anxiety. "The family meeting went worse than expected. My father knows about us." Margaret's blood turned to ice. "How?" "Jennifer. She'd been watching us for months, taking photos, documenting everything. She turned it all over to him last night." Richard was watching Margaret's face, reading every micro-expression with the sharp intelligence she'd always admired and somehow forgotten to fear. "Photos?" Margaret whispered. "Of us leaving hotels together, going to dinner. The necklace I bought you. Apparently someone saw you wearing it at the office Christmas party." David's voice cracked. "Margaret, they're threatening to fire me, to sue me for misuse of company funds, to make this as public and ugly as possible unless I disappear quietly." "Put it on speaker," Richard said quietly. Margaret stared at him. "What?" "Put the call on speakerphone. I want to hear what he has to say." "Richard, please." "Margaret, I've spent months wondering if I was going crazy, if I was imagining things, if the woman I've loved for 23 years was lying to my face every single day. The least you can do is let me hear the truth. From both of you." David's voice was still coming through the phone. "Margaret, are you there? We need to talk about what happens next." With a shaking hand, Margaret put the call on speaker. "She's here," Richard said calmly. "So am I. Her husband. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation." The silence on the other end stretched so long that Margaret wondered if David had hung up. Finally, his voice came through, quieter than before. "Richard, I don't know what to say. How about starting with the truth? How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" "Richard, please," Margaret started. 8 months, David answered, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "But it's not what you think." "What I think," Richard said with devastating calm, "is that you've been having an affair with a married woman whose children consider you a family friend, whose husband trusted you enough to invite you to our dinner table. What I think is that you've been lying and sneaking around and spending company money on hotel rooms, while I've been working 60-hour weeks trying to figure out why my wife doesn't love me anymore." "I never stopped loving you," Margaret whispered. Richard's laugh was bitter. "No, you just started loving someone else more." "That's not..." She stopped because it was true. Somewhere in the past 8 months, her feelings for David had grown larger than her love for the life she'd built with Richard. "Richard," David's voice came through the speaker, "I know you have every right to hate me, but I need you to understand that what Margaret and I have is real. It's not some casual affair or midlife crisis. We love each other." "You love her," Richard corrected. "I'm not sure she knows what she loves anymore." The assessment hit Margaret like a physical blow because it carried the ring of truth. Did she love David, or did she love the way he made her feel? Did she love him? Or did she love the idea of a life where she mattered more than laundry and grocery lists and everyone else's needs? "I do love him," she said quietly. Then go. The words fell into the kitchen like stones into still water. What? Go, to him. Pack your things and go. Richard's voice was unnaturally calm. But understand what you're choosing. You're not just leaving me. You're leaving Emma, who cried for 2 hours last night after she figured out what was happening. You're leaving Michael, who called me at midnight asking if our family was falling apart. You're leaving the life we built together, the future we planned, the grandchildren we'll never spoil together. Margaret felt as if she were drowning. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. People get divorced every day. We could work out custody, arrangements, figure out how to co-parent. Our children are adults, Margaret. There's no custody to arrange, but there are sides to choose, and you can't have both. Richard stood up, moved to the coffee maker with practiced efficiency. If you leave, clean break. I won't be your safety net when things get difficult with your new life. You can't mean that. I absolutely mean it. I've spent 8 months being the understanding husband, the patient father, trying to hold our family together while you figured out what you wanted. But I'm done being everyone's backup plan. Through the phone speaker, David cleared his throat. Margaret, we don't have much time. My father gave me until noon to clean out my office. If we're going to do this, we need to do it now. The ultimatum was clear. Choose now, choose completely, and live with the consequences forever. Margaret looked around the kitchen where she'd made countless meals, where she'd helped her children with homework, where she'd shared coffee and conversation and comfortable silences with the man who'd been her partner for more than half her adult life. I need a minute, she told David. We don't have... I need a minute. The sharpness in her voice surprised everyone, including herself. She hung up the phone and faced Richard, this man who'd been her anchor for so long that she'd forgotten he was also supposed to be her choice. Tell me why, he said quietly. Help me understand what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why? Margaret sank into her chair, struggling to find words for feelings she barely understood herself. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being Margaret and became just your wife, Emma's mother, Michael's mother, the woman who makes sure everyone else is happy and taken care of and never asks what she wants for herself. So you decided to have an affair. I didn't decide anything, it just happened. David saw me, really saw me, not as someone's wife or mother, but as myself. When I was with him, I remembered who I used to be before I became everyone else's support system. Richard was quiet for a long moment. And who was that? I don't know, that's the problem. I don't remember who I was before I became who you needed me to be. I never asked you to disappear, Maggie. You didn't have to ask. It's what wives do. It's what mothers do. We reshape ourselves to fit everyone else's needs until we don't know where we end and everyone else begins. Other wives and mothers manage to keep their identities without cheating. The accusation stung because it was fair. You're right, they do, but I didn't, and I can't undo that now. Her phone rang again. David. This time Richard nodded for her to answer without putting it on speaker. Margaret, I'm in my office cleaning out my desk. Security is here. My father had the locks changed. David's voice was strained. I need to know, are you coming with me or not? Margaret looked at Richard, who was watching her with an expression of quiet devastation and acceptance. Where would we go? I have a job offer in Portland. Food distribution company, nothing glamorous, but it's a start. We could rent a small apartment, build something new together. Portland. 3 states away from her children, her sister, her mother-in-law who was recovering from a stroke. A small apartment instead of the house where her children had grown up. A job for David, but nothing for her, except the promise of love and the reality of starting over at 46 with nothing but each other. Margaret? David's voice was urgent. I have to leave in 20 minutes. Are you coming? She closed her eyes and tried to imagine it. Morning coffee in a strange kitchen, learning new streets, new routines, calling Emma and Michael from a distance, being, say, a voice on the phone instead of a presence in their lives. Explaining to her grandchildren someday why Grandma lives so far away. why she'd chosen a man they barely knew over the family they'd always been part of. I can't. What? I can't do it, David. I can't leave my children. I can't start over from nothing. I can't be the woman who destroyed her family for love. Margaret, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. For starting something I couldn't finish. For making you believe we had a future together. For hurting everyone I'm supposed to love. The silence on the other end lasted forever. Finally, David spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I love you. I love you too. That's why I have to let you go. She hung up the phone and looked at Richard, whose expression was unreadable. So, he said quietly, what happens now? Margaret felt as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the wreckage of everything she'd built, everything she'd destroyed, everything she might still be able to save. Now we figure out if there's anything left to rebuild. Is there? Richard's question was careful, hopeful despite everything. Do you want there to be? Margaret thought about Emma's letter, about Michael's faith in his parents' marriage, about 23 years of shared history and inside jokes, and quiet love that had been overshadowed, but not erased by 8 months of passion. I think so, but it won't be the same. I don't want it to be the same. The same marriage led us here. What do you want? Richard considered the question seriously. I want a wife who chooses to be here instead of settling for being here. I want a partner who tells me the truth, even when it's difficult. I want to know the woman I married, not just the role she's been playing. That woman might not be who you think she is. Then I guess we'll find out together. Over the following months, they did find out. Therapy sessions that felt like excavating an archaeological site, uncovering years of unspoken resentments and unmet needs. Conversations that lasted until dawn, fighting and crying and slowly, carefully learning to trust each other again. Emma and Michael struggled with the revelation of their mother's affair, but they also watched their parents work harder on their relationship than they ever had before. They saw honesty replace politeness, passion replace routine, choice replace obligation. David left town quietly, taking the job in Portland. Margaret heard through mutual friends that he'd eventually married someone else, a woman who could love him without reservation or competing loyalties. She was happy for him and surprised to find that she meant it. A year later, Margaret stood in her kitchen on a Sunday morning, making coffee for Richard and waiting for Emma and Michael to arrive. For their weekly family dinner, the morning light streamed through windows that looked out on the same valley, the same vineyards, the same landscape that had witnessed her crisis and her choice. She was different now, more honest, more direct about her needs and desires, less willing to disappear into everyone else's expectations. The woman who had emerged from the wreckage of her affair was someone she was still learning to know, but someone she was beginning to like. Richard appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, reaching for his own coffee mug with the comfortable familiarity of decades together. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Better than I have in years," she answered, and it was true. They had chosen each other again, deliberately this time, with full knowledge of what that choice cost and what it offered. It wasn't the passionate, consuming love she'd felt for David, but it was deeper, more sustainable, built on truth instead of fantasy. The scent of autumn grapes drifted through the open window, carrying with it the promise of harvest, of transformation, of endings that became beginnings. Margaret breathed it in and smiled, knowing that some kinds of sweetness were worth the wait.